All right, team. So Gemma came to me yesterday asking about how she can get her glutes to activate when she's doing a single-legged hip thrust. So I got her to send me through a video, and I noticed that she's quite tight on her hip flexors, and also she may not have enough strength yet in her glutes to be able to do single leg with good contraction. But there's a couple of things that you can do if your glutes aren't firing well, to build that strength up and to open up your hips ready to go. So the first thing we've got to look at is our hip flexors. They often get very tight, and the hip flexors are on the front of the hip and the glutes are on the back. So if our hip flexors are really tight, they're constantly closed from us sitting all day, they're actually going to inhibit the glute from being able to fire because it's the opposing muscle. So the best fix for that is just a plain old couch stretch. Now, a lot of us have done couch stretch before, so we know how they work, but we all seem to do the lazy man's version, and we don't necessarily understand what we're trying to achieve out of the couch stretch. So I just want to show you. So assuming we've got a wall here, which is my box, but I'm going to pretend it's a wall. We set up our mat, our knee pad. So normally we'd have the back of our foot against the wall, or you can have your toe. What we're trying to do is really open up the quad here. So we've got one hip flexor that runs down the front of the quad, called the rectus femoris, and we also got some hip flexors in the hip that run down into the inside of the femur. Okay, so you often feel like quite an aggressive stretch through the front of the leg, which is what a lot of people feel, and a lot of people hang out down here because this is a pretty deep stretch. But if you can't come up very far, bring your knee forward first of all to a point where you can come up, okay? And then what we're actually trying to do here is we're actually trying to squeeze our glute while we're in this open position. So if we squeeze our glute, this actually posteriorly tilts the pelvis, so it tilts the pelvis back, and it really opens up that iliacus, so that hip flexor that runs down the inside of the hip. And this is the main one that's going to inhibit the glute from functioning. So what I like to say to my clients is get to a point where you can hold this position with your bum squeezed on rock tight for 15 to 20 seconds before you move out of this stretch. Because I find when you first get into it, you're like, ugh, and you can't even get your glute to squeeze at all. And you've got to adjust, move away from the wall, try and let off a bit of tension from the hip flexor. And then you start to get to a point where you can open up the hips, you can posteriorly tilt the pelvis, and you can squeeze that glute. So that's on rock solid, right? From there, you can then try to make it a little bit more aggressive. So bring your knee closer to the wall and see if you can squeeze the glutes. So right there, I find it's not as easy because my hip flexors are tighter, so it's inhibiting my glute, but I'm still able to get some contraction. So once you find you've got good activation of the glute, switch to the other side and repeat. So the idea is we're trying to get our bum to squeeze while we're in the couch stretch, which shows that we've actually opened up the hip flexor and we've got some activation of the glute. So that's number one. Number two, sometimes when we're doing a single-legged hip thrust, we actually don't have the strength in the glute to lock this on. So you should be able to lift up the hips, lock that glute on nice and tight, and lower back down. So we're going up, squeeze the bum, back down again. Up, squeeze the bum, back down. The whole time I'm trying to keep my core engaged. I don't want to tilt the pelvis back and go up because we're going to get mainly hamstring working. We want to tilt the pelvis under, go up, squeeze the glute, and back down. If you find you can't actually get a good contraction of the glutes, I want you to regress this by opening up both feet on the ground, squeezing the hips, squeezing the glutes here, because we're going to find that with the 2 feet on the ground, we're going to get a good burn in the glutes. Then to build up that strength, lift up the opposite leg with the glutes still squeezed, and then lower yourself back down to the ground. And then just repeat that way. 2 feet, lift one up, and back down again. You'll find that you'll get a good contraction of the glutes. As soon as you lift it up, that glute's still going to be active, and then you're going to lower yourself back down. And then you can repeat on the other side. So up, lift up the leg, lower back down. The main thing is whenever we're doing hip thrusts, you want the booty to burn. So make sure you actually feel your bum burning. Hamstrings burning doesn't count. It's all about that booty.